India has about 100 million passports today. 10 million get added every year. So what is this coming to? Like a young digital population, socially inspired and connected and curious to travel the world. We are fascinated by our celebrities, how they travel, how they live. We want to know it all. If a certain destination is featured in a Hindi movie, traffic to that destination is at least 2x the next year. We saw it with Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. We saw it with Switzerland. We got Shah Rukh Khan's and Gauri Khan's home in Delhi. We got Yuvraj's home in Goa. And that became a massive, hit.
Where do you see this going in the next 10 years in India?
If I were to just give you the market sizing, would be about $10 billion right now. This number is going to be 20 billion in the next 4 years. We know that you want to travel. We know you want a unique and authentic experience. Till now, there is no place that offers you that, and we are that place.
On today's episode, we have Amanpreet Singh Bajaj, the India head of Airbnb and the man behind Airbnb's phenomenal rise in the country. See, when Airbnb arrived here, it was not just introducing a new way for Indians to travel, but completely transforming the way Indians experience hospitality itself. See, the concept of living in strangers' homes was very alien to India, but they successfully built trust with their business model and ignited a travel revolution that took urban millennials and Gen Zs by storm. So in today's video, Aman shares his insights from building Airbnb for the last decade in the country, and we dive deep into India's $14 billion travel opportunity. What does it really mean to build in the travel space in the country? We look at Airbnb's India playbook, and we speak about the economics of running an Airbnb. Also, we are now a part of the Zerodha Media Network, which allows us to bring amazing guests like Aman who share their insights, which you can apply to your own work the next morning. Also, by the way, Aman is an angel investor in GrowthX, and we had an amazing time shooting this with him. So let's get to it. Aman, first of all, thank you for being here. We have been extremely excited to shoot with you. Airbnb is fascinating.
No, thanks for having me. Yes, excited to be here.
So coming to 2014,
2015.
early days, just thinking about an Indian and them being used to the traditional forms of hospitality. So being used to hotels, because Airbnb didn't exist at that time. There were no homestays available. Them being used to a waiter waiting for them, room service, being served. But you coming in and telling them, hey, this is not that. You will stay in a stranger's house. There is no room service. If you want to eat, you cook your own food, but you'll stay like a local. How was that? How was that journey to convince an Indian, forget room service and all of that? This is a very different kind of hospitality for you.
You could see everything that you said. That was one way to see things, right? But there was also this another way of saying that, we know that you want to travel. We know you want a unique and authentic experience. And till now, there is no place that offers you that, and we are that place, right? So I think that was the way we kind of started to approach this. So this whole question about, okay, will I stay in a stranger's house? And it goes both ways. So Airbnb is a two-sided marketplace.
Yes.
It connects people who are looking for unique, authentic stays and immersive stays with people who have extra space, whether it's their primary home or secondary home, and they bring it onto the platform. And Airbnb helps connect these two so that people can have a very unique, authentic, immersive experience of travel. So when we started operating in India, my endeavor at that point of time was to go and find people who would love this way of traveling and let them experience Airbnb for the first time.
Hey, before we go any further, I need a minute of yours. See, if you're a marketer or a brand manager or an early founder, you know that feeling when you discover that game-changing user insight and you brief your creative team and execute your brand campaign, but sadly it bombs? That is a clear case of a weak creative strategy. And that changes today. We've spent months building a learning program with Ashwath Swaminathan, the ex-CMO of Swiggy and brains behind mega brands like Brew, Taza, Lakme, and more. We're calling it the craft of creative strategy. So over the course of this learning program, you'll learn to take a business problem and extract the marketing objective behind it. You'll learn how to write creative briefs that inspire your creative team. You'll articulate the heart of your campaign, which we are calling the creative idea, and ensure that it's being executed with world-class production. This program is now available at an early bird price till the 30th of March, and you can check it out with the link in the description. Now let's carry on with our episode.
And so I think there is a lot of merit in kind of going very targeted and niche, and that's the approach we took. So we picked up urban cities, and we thought that this kind of a travel behavior is well suited for youngsters, urban millennials, and they are the ones who are urban millennials and Gen Z, I would say. Why? Because they're not predisposed to hotels. They've not stayed in hotels for a long period of time. And so they would be open to trying new ways of traveling. And one thing with, urban millennials and Gen Z is that they value experiential travel much more than anything. And if people are looking for an experiential stay, staying in a off-beaten destination, staying with a host, meeting people from that community adds to that experience, right? And we thought this suits very well for that need. So our initial strategy was basically go and we had to build it on both sides, right? So we said, let's go and identify these locations where people would want to travel to. Obviously, Goa was top of the list, and talk to people who would want to do this. While there were no platforms like Airbnb, but products like bread and breakfast and homestays still existed in our culture. So you would walk down a street in Goa and you would see these boards and say homestay rooms available, but they were just not digital, right? So the idea was to create awareness about a platform like Airbnb with them, bring them on board. And many of them did this as a key passion area for them. So they would bring a very unique perspective to hosting per se. And on the other hand, we said, let's talk to younger folks in Bombay, in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in the urban cities who are looking for this kind of travel, right? And let's first create some kind of buzz within this network. And that was our early days of traction. I still remember when I took over, there were only about 50 odd listings in Goa, or about 100 odd listings in Goa, 50 odd listings in Agra. And these were big tourism hotspots, right? And I was like, okay, first you need to build supply. And I think that was a basic lesson of building a marketplace two-sided, that first you have to bring in good supply. That supply would attract good demand. Once you have more demand, this will attract new supply again, and the flywheel of a marketplace will kind of revolve. But when you're seeding a marketplace, early days of a marketplace, you have an opportunity to set the tonality of that market. So the kind of people you bring on board, has to be curated. It has to be intentional, because what other people will see on the platform is, okay, this kind of host works, or this kind of supply works. When I offer XYZ during that stay, that works, right? And that will attract people to offer the same way. And this was our strategy to begin with. This whole question about, will I be able to go and stay in a stranger's house? Obviously these are concerns that are in everyone's mind. But when I spoke to the founders, they said, when we grew in the US, they were the same questions that were asked. Then they said, then we went to Europe to expand. Same questions were asked. How do we trust strangers? And will we be open to do this? Then they expanded to Asia Pacific. Same questions were asked. So what I understood was this was not an India specific issue. And I think that was a key distinction to understand. This is basic human nature. But one thing was also very clear that, the human innate nature is to connect and to meet people from different cultures. You have to build trust. And once they are convinced that, okay, the platform has done enough, then they will feel comfortable transacting on the internet. So first few years of Airbnb India were also trying to see how can we continue to build trust. One thing was very clear. This business would not be built on faster discounting. So for example, if Harsh, you put your home on the platform and you say, I want to price this home at 10,000 rupees a night, you do that because you want to attract a certain kind of audience. But what if I go in as a platform and say, yes, you might have asked for 10,000, but I am giving a 50% coupon over this, and 10% if you use a certain credit card, and suddenly your house is now available at 3,000 rupees or 4,000 rupees, right? It will attract a very different kind of an audience, maybe a deal seeker or something, whatever, right? Maybe what you did not want. We knew that this business will only scale once trust sets in. So foundation was about to build trust. Trust through the product, trust through our partnerships, trust through whatever we would convey from a communication standpoint. And trust became the cornerstone of our strategy to start with in India. And yes, we had to kind of innovate and be creative. We knew that, when people come on board on Airbnb, they expect a certain level of verification, a certain level of checks that the platform would have done. And we saw very early on that the infrastructure to do this was available. In 2015, if I were to apply for a postpaid connection, somebody would visit my place and kind of verify where I stay. If I needed a $5,000 loan, like 2 lakh rupees, 3 lakh rupees, somebody will come to my place of work, tick that box in the small diary, go to my residence, tick something, talk to a few people around, and give a report back and say, this is worthy of giving a loan or not. And we said, why can't we use this infrastructure to verify listings or hosts, that they exist or not, right? So in the early days, we started doing this so that we could create a pool of verified hosts that are coming onto the platform. The other thing was, India was not a do-it-yourself market. So in the US or in Europe or in any other place, it was very easy for people to see an ad and say, become a host, your home can pay for your next travel. This was our standard way of attracting new hosts. India, as you rightly said, there is a service expectation. There is you have to handhold people, especially when there is something which is new. A host would not just see an ad and put their home on the platform. So we said, let's create a different approach towards approaching this host. So we created a network of feet on street team, right? So we mapped and we said, okay, we want to be in 15 cities. Organically, we were only in 5 or 6 in terms of volume, but we mapped out and said maybe we need to be in 15 cities over the next 12 months. In these 15 cities, we want to have homes that are of a certain kind. So they would be in a certain neighborhood, and you want to attract hosts of a certain kind, right? People who are younger, passionate about doing this, were exposed to this in some way or the other. And not just younger, I think we looked at every demographic. In fact, one of the key demographics of hosts that we looked at were empty nesters. People whose kids were away, whether working abroad or studying abroad, and they had large homes and they were looking for social connection. This whole piece around Airbnb was a perfect play for them, because it was not for the money that they would host. They would do this to meet people from different cultures, connect with them, and that would add value to them. So we looked at all of these aspects and we said, let's now create small groups of teams that would go in with these mapped key neighborhoods. And we started creating these community meetups there. So, small, for example, one cafe, bring in 10 people and start talking about the benefits of Airbnb as a platform. And sometimes we would innovate and bring in a host who would say, I do this and I meet people from different walks of life and I earn income as well. Once you hear it from a host who's doing this, somebody like you doing this, you feel that I can also do this. And in this process, as a company, we were listening to feedback that what were the expectations from Airbnb. So an ID check, maybe a background check, So we built in all of these processes, and this kind of helped us get to the first 2,000 hosts in every city.
So I think a lot of people don't realize that it is a marketplace, which is, I think, the core moat that Airbnb has is differentiated supply, right? I think I want to double click a lot on this, right? So like you said, onboarding the first 2,000 hosts. Talk to me about interesting stories that happened then. Talk to me about like a interesting story of like you meeting a host and kuch interesting ho gaya wahan pe. What was getting these people initially?
I think it's a great blend of 3 things. One is unique hosts. And hosts, and now we've built tools where, we called it a passport, where you can learn about a host. Host is a chef, host is a musician, host has been in 20 different countries, host is a startup founder, whatever, right? And so it's a host, then it's the home. A lot of people also come to Airbnb just to get design and inspiration ideas for beautiful homes around the world. Because, what you see is when you have unique places from different neighborhoods, the personalities of those people get reflected in those houses. The culture of the unique local place gets reflected in the house, right? So a 100-year-old Portuguese villa in Goa looks very different, and maybe a small house in, say, Greece, and people come for that inspiration. They want to stay in these unique places as well. So it's the host, then it's the home, and it's also the neighborhood, the hood. When all of these 3 come together, it's a magical experience. So for example, you go in and you stay in a small neighborhood in, say, Athens. The host, you see a beautiful Greek home. The host is maybe an entrepreneur there. He talks about his passion about, say, olives. And then you kind of learn a little bit more about the olive trade and everything. And in the evening, he takes you to the favorite restaurant where 5 of his friends are also there. And you have a beautiful time in the evening interacting with his community where you have access to, and in that neighborhood which you would have never visited otherwise. So when this triangular, coordination of the home, the hood, and the host comes in, that makes it a very unique experience. And that's what people look for.
So I think coming to the micro entrepreneur bit, talk to me about this phenomena that's happening. There are countless videos today of people buying homes or vacation homes in Goa and all these destination places just because they want to put it up on Airbnb. Talk to me about that phenomena. And what have you seen there? Uh, have you had conversations with these people? And what's like the economics of it? And how is it working out for them?
Our strength as a platform is the diversity of hosts and homes that we are offering, right? So there is an Airbnb at every price point for every need. So if you're looking for a spare room in Mumbai, the way you mentioned, you can book it for from anywhere between 1,000 rupees and you can take it up to 100,000 rupees depending on a luxury property as well. If you're looking for a large villa with a pool with your family, we are seeing that consumer preference change post pandemic where people want to travel as large groups. You can book that in Goa, you can book that in Bangalore in a farmhouse, etc., right? And whether it is a unique property where you want much more experiential, a farm stay, stay near a golf course, maybe a tree house, all of this is also possible on Airbnb. So our strength is the diversity and the unique options that Airbnb provides, right? As I said, travel is increasingly led by millennials and Gen Z today who are looking for this kind of an experiential stay. They get attracted to our platform. There are all kinds of hosts. There are people like you and me sharing their homes, right? And so as a core host, you might host only for 10 days in a month, right? And you might only rent out one part of your home. And then once you start doing this, people start doing this as a small time business. So these are the host entrepreneurs. And the unit economics there could also vary because they might be managing one or two homes in the vicinity where people know, acha, you've been doing this. Why don't you do it for us? And maybe we take a share of it. So that's also something that has happened, right? And then this ecosystem of professional hosts is developed specifically in vacation rental markets, whether it is Goa, because a lot of people buy secondary homes in these markets for investments, and the yields in, say, short-term rentals is far more than maybe a long-term rental, right? Depending on the location, depending on the investment amount, etc. All of this has a place on Airbnb because sometimes people are looking for a serviced option, and that could come in from these operators who are managing these villas in, say, Goa or the hill stations or anywhere else, right? So if I were to just pick that example, right? And there are many companies that have now come up. It started off where the need was that, and maybe that was something that people saw as an opportunity, that Airbnb is an open marketplace, but people are also looking for end-to-end management of a kind of a stay. And so you have companies like Stay with Star, Saffron Stays, many other that have sprung up, and all of them are extremely doing very well across India, and they also list on Airbnb. So they use Airbnb as a distribution channel as well, and we work very closely with them on multiple aspects, right? And so we continue to be a distribution platform. We continue to be a network which has all kinds of properties. So Shubham can list, but so can Stay with Star or any other else, right? Say, for example, let's pick up this company. There's a company called Staymaster. They operate in Goa. They run maybe about 100 plus villas, and they don't own any of these villas. So maybe person X has a villa. They go to them and say, I can't host because I don't have the time to do check in, check out, and all of this, and I'm not an expert at it. But I have this secondary home in Goa. Why don't you run it for me? And Staymaster would again say, okay, we'll put it on Airbnb. We will find you more demand from other channels, and we'll manage it for you for a rev share. So typically, the way this would work is, say, they would earn average occupancy depending on, and this varies location by location, city by city. But if I were to break it down, let's say average number of 75% occupancy. So 75% of the days in a year, the home will be rent out. And so whatever you earn as a daily rate, Airbnb takes a 3% commission from the host. So minus that is your revenue. Now, there are certain expenses that are required for the running of the home. So this could be housekeeping because you need to provide linen, you need to provide, laundry, all of those things are taken care of, right? Then there is utilities. So you have to pay for electricity bills, you have to pay for gas bills, etc. And then there are compliance costs. Sometimes, there are compliance needs. For example, you have to pay for a license, you have to do renewal of those licenses, etc. All of this combined, in my opinion, would be anywhere between 20 to 25% of the cost of the revenue. The rest goes primarily into the hands of the homeowner. Now, in case this was being managed by an agency for you, like Staymaster, they might have a commission structure of 15 to 20%. So a secondary homeowner who's not into hosting themselves can expect anywhere between 60 odd percent to 65%, depending on what kind of structure they choose in terms of realization coming from there. Now, if they were not using a company like Staymaster, but they had put their own staff there, they don't have to pay that operator fee. So they maybe the 25% expenses can go to 28, 29, and they would then pocket 70% of it. Mm-hmm. If I am a core host, like doing this on a 10-day basis or anything, I can use my existing staff domestic staff that I have to provide that service, and this expense could come down to 15%. And so the unit economics look very simple in this way. In the best case scenario, you may make 85% of the net earnings in a place where you are not doing this actively but getting it managed by somehow, but there the occupancy will be higher because this is being managed professionally in a different location. In vacation rentals, you'll make anywhere between 60-65%.
So talk to me about this new generation of users that are coming up. What have you understood on insights? What do they value? And everything about them.
8 out of 10 new bookers that come on our platform are from this cohort of millennials and Gen Z. But you also have to understand that's the fabric of India today. So if you look at it, India is about big numbers, about 800, 900 million internet users now, many of them using internet on the mobile phone. So they're digitally connected. India is also inherently young, right? So 65% of the population is under the age of 35. So we are the world's largest cohort of millennials, urban millennials and Gen Z now, right? And one thing, as you rightly said, when travel is led by them, they're looking for more experiential travel. And again, they're not predisposed to hotels, right? So they are always looking for newer ways to travel. And so they want to try new places, new locations, new things, and they want to immerse. I think the third piece is we are also a inherently social country in terms of social media, I'm saying, right? Apart from the community aspect, we have about 400 million Instagram users, and travel is very inspirational on social. And then it's not just India. Large part of it is also now curious to explore the world, right? As income increases, as predisposable income increases for us, as more and more people have access to the internet, they see the world on a small screen. They want to be part of this now. So India has about 100 million passports today. 10 million get added every year. So what is this coming to? Like a young digital population, socially inspired and connected and curious to travel the world. And what's the best platform to connect them to the rest of the world? Airbnb, because that's what they're looking for. So our aim as a company is to make sure that we are able to create more awareness within this cohort about Airbnb, about its unique listings, make it easy for this generation of users to discover new places. And once you kind of expose them to them, they will eventually have a great experience because our service and the product is beyond the tech platform as well, right? And they would use that, right? So if I were to kind of look at the trends that we are seeing, right? As the pandemic receded, the innate desire for people to connect was always there. A lot of people were wanting to just go out and connect. And what happened for Airbnb India was there was a massive shift towards 2-3 things. Number one, a lot of people till that point were using us abroad, but they were still not ready to use us in India because they trusted hotels more maybe, or maybe did not find the listings that they wanted, or every time they were making a decision to travel, they would end up choosing abroad destinations or Goa, and then they would maybe choose Airbnb or not. But during the pandemic, a lot of people could not travel overseas, right? But they could travel 200 kilometers from their home. So they wanted to explore newer off the beaten path destinations out in the nature, farm stays, closer to their backyard, right? And if you look at this, there is not much hotel inventory there, right? Hotels are still under-penetrated in India. They might be in X number of cities, but you go beyond a certain kilometer range out of an urban center, the hotel is more long tail. And so they started looking at Airbnb. The second thing that happened during this was they were traveling with their family, but they wanted a space for themselves which was private. So they did not want to go eat in a common area in the breakfast, did not want to share a pool. And so they said, why not book an Airbnb where all of the family members can stay together, have access to a pool, we'll cook and we'll stay together. The third thing that happened post the pandemic was there was far more flexibility for people to travel, right? So work from home became a reality and people were not tethered to one location. So that was one. The other was digital adoption increased during this period. A lot of people were now much more, it was acceptable for them to monitor their businesses electronically. And so the flexibility to travel at any point of time helped people to say that, okay, I want to stay longer now. I want to stay for 7 days. And if I'm staying longer, I want to do it in a home that I can, have a homely feel. I can cook or I can, get cooked food, whatever it is. And all of these factors led to the adoption of Airbnb for the first time for many of these users. And then the moment they used this, they said, wow, this is great. I want to continue using this. So during the pandemic, these changes, flexibility, group travel, wanting a space a personal space which they controlled, led to adoption, and also looking at destinations closer to your city, led to Airbnb springing up in all these parts. So I remember during the pandemic, about 120 new pin codes saw their first bookings for the first time, right? Because people were wanting to explore newer destinations. And so if I were to just sum it up in a macro way, Gen Zs and millennials are leading the pack for us. They want experiential travel and they want to explore their own backyard while they want to explore the world as well. We also saw the rise of a more responsible and conscious travel. So people introspected and say, my actions have impact on communities. Now let me be conscious about where I want to go and stay. Does that house, have sustainable practices? There is a niche audience of people who make these travel decisions based on the impact on the community that they would visit and say. And the responsible and focus on, more mindful travel, more wellness related travel also led to people looking for these kind of stays on the platform. And that has led to also an increase. And one more thing that is driving is group travel. If I were to see last year alone, we have seen 30% increase in bookings made for groups of size more than 3. And group travel is basically friends getting together, maybe couples getting together, a multi-generational family going together. And it lends very well to a proposition from Airbnb. You have separate rooms, you still have common areas to come by, you have access to a kitchen, maybe amenities like pool, etc. And you can stay in any neighborhood you want. We have also seen a big boost towards spiritual tourism in the last 1 year. It is one of the biggest drivers of domestic tourism right now for us. And again, lends very well. When you are visiting a religious shrine, you're more likely traveling as a family together. And when you go there, you want one place for yourself. And we've seen not just the area around Mahakumbh like Prayagraj, etc., getting bookings, but religious centers in India, whether it is say Varanasi, whether it is Tirupati, whether it is Ajmer Sharif, or whether it is Amritsar, they see good booking in terms of growth of hosts as well as guests, throughout the year. Solo travel also is increasing. So a lot of people are saying that I want to explore the world myself alone, and they do it with Airbnb because they feel that it's a trusted way to stay and again immerse in the local culture. So solo travel is increasing, group travel is increasing, responsible and conscious travel is increasing. A lot of people are looking for experiences along with the stays. They want to try destinations off the beaten path. They want to try unique spaces like tree houses, mud houses, ecological stays, and all of this they find on one platform, and that's Airbnb.
No, very fascinating. I think just in terms of numbers, whatever you can share, how big is Airbnb India today?
I can't get into numbers per se, but very, very excited about the growth prospects. And we're still scratching the surface. If I were to just give you the market sizing, the total addressable TAM for destination India, which basically means Indians within India as well as people coming in from outside India and staying here, would be about $10 billion right now. This number is going to be 20 billion in the next 4 years. If I were to look at origin, which is basically Indians going either overseas or within India, this number is about $14 billion right now, online accommodation TAM, right? And this number will become 29 billion by 2029. So it's growing at about 15 to 16% year over year. And there are many factors that are leading to it. Very curious population. And the world is waking up to the Indian users now or travelers now. So in the last 2 years or so, we have seen many countries in the world ease visa restrictions for Indian travelers, right? Whether it's Thailand, whether it's Malaysia or many other countries. And travel to these places has increased by almost 2x for us. So I do believe that in the next few years, the pool of global travelers and the mix of global travelers will change. And a large part of this will come from India. And there'll be young travelers wanting to, explore the rest of the world. And this will form a significant contribution of global spending in terms of travel dollars.
I think coming to Icons, I think when you all launched Icons, my mind was blown. I think the 10 listings that you did was fascinating. From India, I think it was Janvi Kapoor. Talking about that, why do that?
A large portion of our traffic is direct and organic. And for a tech company, a consumer tech company, that is extremely impactful, right? Because we don't have to pay for it. And a large part of this is because the buzz that unique places and unique experiences has created for us. So there is an endeavor at Airbnb to create these experiences or stays that money cannot buy otherwise. And I think that's what Icon is for, where we partnered with iconic spaces or iconic people in a certain genre, and we created an experience that people would not have access to otherwise. And we said we make it happen only on Airbnb through Icons, right? And we've done this in the past. We learned from it. For example, in India, we got the City Palace in Jaipur, which is the royal home of the royal family of Jaipur, and not a hotel. And we brought that home for the first time, and they became the first royal hosts in the country. We got Shah Rukh Khan's and Gauri Khan's home in Delhi. A lot of people wanted to see life, like what is their personal life in a city like Delhi, and then we brought that house on the platform. We got Yuvraj's home in Goa, and so I think we had done this in a part, and globally, for example, you've done a Barbie house in Malibu, and that became a massive, hit. The kind of press hits that got was much more than the IPO as well, right? And so we came up with an idea that, okay, people are looking for these iconic experiences. We are in a unique position to bring this to life, and let's work towards that. So when we looked at India, one of the key aspects of us building a presence here is how do we become part of the cultural zeitgeist of India? And one thing is very clear. We are fascinated by our celebrities, how they travel, how they live. We want to know it all, right? In fact, the fact that if a certain destination is featured in a Hindi movie, traffic to that destination is at least 2x the next year. We saw it with Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. We saw it with Switzerland being one of the itinerary, bucket list for all people, especially the millennials, after seeing the movies there, right? And so celebrities inspire a lot of travel. In fact, we've seen numbers where social media is the influence in terms of travel decisions by celebrities, social media influencers is almost 2 to 2.5x versus the rest of the world. So India looks up to them for inspiration. And then we said our audience is very young, Gen Z and millennials. And we looked at who they would want to relate with. And we thought Janvi was a great icon because at the end of the day, she relates very well with that cohort. And since she comes from a family, which a lot more people can relate with. I grew up watching Sridevi films, for example. And when we started discussing, they talked about this home that they had in Chennai, which was bought by Sridevi ji, and nobody has seen that. And we thought this is iconic in multiple ways. Current generation, past generation, and access which money cannot buy for anyone. And that's how it came to be.
Then cool. I think, Aman, you were talking about the top Indian cities that are contributing to Airbnb's India business. What are they today, and what are you seeing the cities that are coming up next?
So Goa remains top of the list for us, and no surprise, it is, it has a lot to offer, and it is now a 365-day-a-year kind of a destination, right? We see urban cities do very well because they become a gateway to India, but Bangalore, Delhi, Pune and Hyderabad would be the top 5 for us. But what we are also seeing is that, so the periphery around Mumbai, Lonavala, Karjat, Alibag, that does very well. Hill stations do very well for us. And our idea now is to make sure that we disperse more people away from, just the main centers. And so what we're seeing is smaller towns come up near, say, Nainital or somewhere else, Kasauli, etc., that are getting bookings as well. And so what we've seen is as more conscious and responsible travel increases, people are looking for newer destinations which are off the beaten path. For example, there is a town called Jibi in Himachal Pradesh that's getting, a lot of footfall, some very unique places there. We see Varkala in Kerala getting this, and many other towns and cities that you may not think of in terms of, travel per se, but are now getting, there. So some of these are getting traction for sure.
Hey, Aman, want to speak to you about the India opportunity. So we've been building this for a decade with Airbnb. And I'm sure the next decade to come. But if you had to, from your vantage point, as you shared all your numbers of origin travel being $29 billion by 2029, online accommodation, where do you see this going in the next 10 years in India? Where do you see travel going? How big is the opportunity? And tell us everything that's happening in the space.
So, the numbers tell the story. We are at about 14 billion online accommodation TAM right now for origin. 65% of this is domestic, 35% is outbound. All of this is growing at about 15% CAGR, right? And by 2029, this number would be about 29 billion. I'm sure these are just rough estimates right now. I'm quoting Euromonitor numbers, but we will see this number to be much higher. And I think that there are 2-3 things driving this. One is definitely economic growth. As our economic growth increases, people will have more income, more, disposable income, it's primarily spent on travel. Once you've done other things, and it's going to be primarily led by millennials and Gen Z, which is also bulk of our population. A lot of this will be within India, but a lot of this, as infrastructure improves, as highway connectivity improves, the aviation market is also, one of the fastest growing for us. Both Indigo Airlines and Air Indias have made the biggest orders for airplanes ever in the history of aviation. All of this, and obviously the government policies around Udan and having smaller airports, all of this will increase connectivity and people will travel more. Overall, very bullish on the future of travel within India. And as digital penetration increases, as more people become more aware about different kinds of stays and accommodations and experiences that are available, they are more likely to come online. And I think for us or any other player right now, we are just scratching the surface. And so the opportunity is immense. We see the numbers. India is one of the fastest growing emerging markets for Airbnb. And I won't be surprised that if it continues to be like this for the next 5 years or so. There are massive tailwinds. And I think our aim is to make sure that we are able to create more awareness in all these cohorts so more people can benefit.
I think, Aman, last question. Not for once is the objective of this conversation to make building a company, building startups, building careers sound too good to be true, sound just exciting in general, or make it feel easy. We keep saying this, that in the journey of building, about 80, 85, 90% times are days when you see failures. Only about 5, 10, 15% times are the days where you've really felt like you've accomplished something. So the idea is to not paint a rosy picture, but ask you to share your stories of things and times when you felt like, fuck, this will not work. Ya sab fat gaya hai. So would love for you to share some reflections.
One key not a failure or learning that I thought was, when I was building this two-sided marketplace, maybe in the initial years, I focused too much on the supply. And I did not focus on creating awareness per se. In hindsight, maybe if I would have done more on the demand side, maybe we would have been much bigger in India right now. In hindsight, you can kind of go and you look at, some of these areas. But I do believe foundationally what you do, what is right for the business, comes from only one aspect, which is going back to the user. I see that, follow the user. And I think it's a great learning. The user will tell you what they need, and you need to be in a constant listening mode. Listen, build, execute, and iterate from there. That's going to be the key mantra to win.